of Kate Comm and a former Obama Florida campaign spokesman, and David Hoppy, former chief of staff for Speaker of the House Paul Ryan. I know we were going to talk about other things today, but breaking news happens always around 1:58 p.m., so we're switching topics because this is pretty big news. Let me start with you, Kevin. I don't know if you knew Valerie Jarrett based on your experience and working with the Obama team, but this seemed like it not only crossed the line for people in the Obama camp, but all across America, and ABC was quick to react. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you have to give credit to ABC. I mean, this was a show that was making them money. A lot of people watched it, and I know they addressed some issues that people wanted to talk about, including opioids and other kind of sensitive issues for a large segment of the population. But ABC moved fast. I think you said it right. I mean, these tweets were just, I can't describe how awful they were.
Kevin, hold on a second.
Racist.
Let me ask, do we have the original tweet that she put up? Not yet. Okay. As soon as we get that, I'm going to bring it up for you. I want to make sure I quote it accurately. She had tweeted a lot recently, David, about Chelsea Clinton, George Soros, today Valerie Jarrett. As a political matter, when you're looking at something like this, you know, you make a tough, big decision. But politics and corporate America are really converging. Lots of examples even today. The NFL, Starbucks, and now here with Roseanne being canceled after this tweet. What do you think about that in terms of the speed with which ABC reacted?
Well, I think, Dana, they were right to react and react quickly. Sometimes, and seems often, I have to say, on Twitter, people engage their mouth and their finger before they engage their mind and say things that are deplorable. This is just beyond the pale, and they reacted correctly. There's a lot of people, as you pointed out just a minute ago, who are going to suffer for this, who had nothing to do with it because they've lost their jobs now. Yeah. And just sit down and put yourself in somebody else's shoes, for heaven's sakes. Don't engage your mouth or your finger before you engage your brain.
Kevin, do you think there's a larger point here about the divide? You know, her show was very popular, but really, I don't think it was just because of her, but it was about the subject matter and the characters that they were talking about on the show, which were people in middle class America, the ones that we sometimes refer to as in flyover country, where I grew up. And is there something to be said there about an opening for either the right or the left to start paying more attention to them, whether it be in entertainment, but certainly in politics?
Well, I think all political campaigns should pay attention to anybody, regardless of where they're from. But I think what this speaks to is how people are just becoming sick of the vitriol that they see on Twitter. Imagine, for instance, if the president was held to a similar standard to Roseanne today based on some comments he's made about immigrants and other issues. I think maybe Twitter would be a better place for my kids to go to, for other people to see. So I do think that it's important to talk to those working class voters, but it's also important, like ABC did today, to say that it's not okay to make these kind of repulsive comments.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan, David, of people that are on Twitter. Some people on Twitter just need to put it down and use the rule of if you think you want to say something, say it out loud to your friend. Don't necessarily put it on Twitter. But what about this idea that it will be inevitable that because Roseanne's character on the show did support President Trump, that there will be some sort of attempt to make a correlation between the two? But as Brett Baier said, is it going to be possible for people to try to separate these two things and see her as somebody who acted solo and alone? Nobody was tweeting for Roseanne Barr. She was doing it herself. Yeah,
she was not doing it as a character on a show. She was doing it as Roseanne Barr. I'm sorry, people have to stop and think they are separate. These are very different things. You may like or dislike some of the things President Trump says in his tweets, but what Roseanne Barr did today is Roseanne Barr's alone to take responsibility for, and nobody else's.
I actually now just got the original Roseanne tweet from this morning. She has since deleted it, but here it is. It says, Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby, and it equals VJ. She was referring to Valerie Jarrett. That was the original tweet, Kevin, that started the ball rolling that ABC quickly acted on. Your thoughts on that particular tweet?
I hope it's the last time we see it on TV. I mean, it's that bad. I just... it's hard to explain. Some of these people, they're dedicated public servants, and like David and you have said, sometimes people just need to put the phone down, take a second, and think about their own prejudice.
Also, let's talk for a moment, David, about those decisions that people in power or leadership or in management sometimes make, and it affects a lot of other people. You worked on Capitol Hill for a long time and ran that as the chief of staff on the House side for the Republicans. I mean, you've seen it before where a lapse in judgment by one person might mean that that congressman or congresswoman has to resign, but you do have a lot of people underneath you as a leader that are supporting you, working their butts off for you, then all of a sudden they find out they don't have a job.
From time to time, everybody moves a little too quickly. And my advice oftentimes was just slow down, take a deep breath, and think about what you're doing. Think through it out loud, think through it in your mind, think through it, as you said, as if you're talking to a friend, and stop for just a moment. The world's not going to change in the 10 or 12 or 15 seconds or 30 seconds it takes for you to think about what you're doing. And none of us are safe from it, which is why we all ought to remember, just take a little time, breathe out, and think through what you're putting down on paper, what you're putting down on Twitter, into the Twitter universe. Those are things that you can't get back, and they do express something. If you don't want to express it, then don't. Stop yourself.
Yeah. That's great advice. I do have the apology that Roseanne tweeted as well. She said, Kevin, she said, I apologize to Valerie Jarrett and to all Americans. I am truly sorry for making a bad joke about her politics and her looks. I should have known better. Forgive me. My joke was in bad taste. The problem I have with that is that if it was a joke initially, you know, well, first of all, that's not even a joke. But if you are trying to use the excuse that something is a joke because you're a comedian, do you think that that will actually pass muster with the people she's apologizing to?
I mean, it's hard to say, given our kind of divisive nature of politics right now. I'm sure people are out there already defending her, and I think it's tough to say right now. But I do think it's important that the society as a whole, everybody here on your show today, you've been in the press office, you know what it's like when somebody says something they shouldn't, nothing even close to something like this. But you know, she shouldn't have said it. She knows she shouldn't have said it. We've seen comedians held accountable in the past. I mean, Kramer, I believe, from Seinfeld, obviously was kind of blackballed for some comments he made as well. So something can be funny without being racist, and nothing racist is funny.
I think that's a good place to end it. All right, David and Kevin, thank you for being with me today.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
All right, and I think coming right up, we have a treat. Greg Gutfeld, my co-host on The Five and the host of The Greg Gutfeld Show, which airs on Saturday nights at 10 p.m. He's going to join me to talk about the firing of Roseanne and the canceling of the show, Roseanne's show. And Howie Kurtz, also the one who comments on the media, he'll be here as well. Stay tuned. ABC has canceled Roseanne following her racist tweet about former Obama advisor Valerie Jarrett. Julie Banderas with a live update here in New York. Julie, what do you know?
All right. Well, you know, after a series of the racist rants posted by Roseanne on Twitter, ABC has canceled, as you mentioned, the successful 90s sitcom comedy Comeback. Roseanne's most recently tweet, that was actually deleted this morning when she posted an Islamophobic tweet referring to former Obama aide Valerie Jarrett, who is black but not Muslim, I should add. She tweeted this, and you just found the tweet. We'll put it up again, as Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of Apes who had a baby. That tweet was, of course, deleted. It was in response, though, to another user tweeting an article from a conspiratorial right-wing outlet claiming Obama's CIA spied on French presidential candidates. Needless to say, shortly after that, stand-up comedian Wanda Sykes, who was also a consulting producer on Roseanne's show, tweeted, "I will not be returning to Roseanne on ABC." Then ABC Entertainment president Channing Dungey said in a statement, "Roseanne's Twitter statement is abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with our values, and we have decided to cancel her show." And that was that. This isn't the first time that Roseanne Barr has compared a black Democratic official to an ape. It sounds weird to even say that out loud, but back in 2013, she actually called Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice a man with big swinging ape balls. Amid the ensuing outrage, Barr, whose series reboot was renewed for a second season after just one episode, she defended herself against the charges of Islamophobia, writing, "Islam is not a race, lefties. Islam includes every race of people." This ordeal actually began Tuesday morning when Barr first took aim at George Soros and the Clinton family. Oddly enough, Barr falsely claimed Chelsea Clinton, who's married to Soros's nephew, and then called her Chelsea Soros Clinton, to which Chelsea replied, "Good morning, Roseanne. My given middle name is Victoria. I imagine George Soros's nephews are lovely people. I'm just not married to one." But Roseanne Barr, nonetheless, that is what they signed up for. ABC knows that she's a controversial figure and one that does not like to, let's say, censor herself. And I think that's why she rated so well. And it was a successful program until today.
You're right. Listening to some of those tweets, it does feel like a gut punch right there. So Julie Banderas, thanks for bringing us the story and giving us the whole context. But now let's bring in Howie Kurtz. He's Fox News media analyst and host of Media Buzz. Wanted to get your take on ABC, who must have done a very quick cost-benefit analysis and decided we are going to cut ties.
Yeah, this is a spectacular self-immolation by Roseanne Barr after an equally spectacular comeback. In the old days, when things didn't move at Twitter speed, Dana, what you'd have is you'd have 2 or 3 days, and the executives would weigh the money, and they would gauge the reaction, and they would say, it's unfortunate, and then would probably end up firing her in the end. Right now, it happens within hours. The damage to the show, to the Roseanne brand, and potentially to the ABC network was deemed to be so great that they decided to pull the plug on what had been, as you say, a very successful show.
To Julie's point, Julie Banderas, who just gave us that report, I mean, ABC News knew that Roseanne Barr has long been a controversial figure. When they decided to relaunch the show, they must have done a cost-benefit analysis at that point as well. The relaunch was extremely successful. I think we talked about it on The Five for 3 days in a row. President Trump, congratulating Roseanne on those big ratings, and then it gets a second season. So ABC at some point must have known that they were basically playing with fire here.
Yeah, ABC President Ben Sherwood openly talked about her, style on Twitter being very edgy, being over the top. But I don't think ABC expected anything like this. And, just on a human level, I mean, she should have been on top of the world. Everybody was praising the show. She had great ratings. And instead, she showed all this anger on Twitter and making these ugly, and in this case, racist remarks. She really did sort of blow up the show, blow up her career, do damage to the other people who worked on that show, and also taint ABC by association. So, yes, you're right. ABC knew she was a bit of an unguided missile. I don't think the executives expected that she would continue to go this far.
Speaking of those executives, we have a new statement just in from Disney President Bob Iger. He retweeted ABC's official announcement and added, "There was only one thing to do here, and that was the right thing," and that was to cancel it. So I guess that's ABC hoping to try to bottle this up pretty quickly, because the damage to the network could have been great if they had let it drag on.
Yeah, ABC gets credit for reacting instantly, for doing what many people would say is a decent thing. I mean, it's a shame because a lot of people like the show, but confronted with racist language like this, the network really had no choice and did spring into action very quickly before the backlash against ABC could build.
What do you think, Howie, about how people's thoughts and commentary on Twitter is driving all of these news cycles? I'm curious how you see that. I know that you've been in the news and you've covered the news for a long time, and it just seems like if somebody hasn't tweeted something, then we don't talk about it.
Yeah, it's certainly true. Obviously, in the case of President Trump, who mounts all kinds of attacks and does counterpunching on Twitter and then gets the rest of the news business chasing that. But it's also true now. I mean, I know of a number of journalists, entertainers, public figures who either been suspended or lost their jobs because they said ugly things on Twitter. And it just shows you, I think there's a tendency, maybe especially early in the morning or late at night, to hit send a little too quickly and to say things you wouldn't say in another form that you wouldn't say in front of a camera. And I think this is the latest, most dramatic evidence of it. But yes, we all live in a Twitter universe now.
We do. And I just really feel for the people who worked on that show behind the scenes. They had a really good thing going, and now she ruined it. All right, Howie, thank you.
Great to see you.
The stock market taking a hit today. Up next, what's behind the down day on Wall Street? And Chris Starr. Stocks in the U.S. and Europe are sinking as political turmoil in Italy stokes fears of instability. The Dow dropping nearly 500 points earlier today. Investors are running for safety, buying U.S. bonds while selling financial stocks and U.S. companies with international exposure. Smaller firms with a focus on U.S. sales are doing better than the rest of the market. So you might want to look at it. Fox News alert: ABC canceling Roseanne Barr's show after her racist comments this morning about former Obama advisor Valerie Jarrett. The network calling her comments abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with our values. My co-host on The Five, Greg Gutfeld, is here, and you were the first person I called at 1:56 p.m. when the news broke. I was hoping that you were in the building and could join me here.
Finally, you have me on your show.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you.
Took Roseanne to get fired for me to be on your show.
But I'll have you back to sell your book.
I know I'm no Chris Starwalt, but...
oh, he's on after you, don't worry.
Yes.
Actually,
Starwalt sandwich.
What do you make of this? Because we talked about this show on The Five a lot, about the successful relaunch of it. As Howie Kirsch just said, she should have been on top of the world.
Twitter, it's a fact, is a lesser version of you. No matter who you are, when you go on Twitter, you are never as good as you are as a normal person. And I say that about myself. I don't like who I am on Twitter. And if you combine a bunch of variables, whether you're drinking, I assume that might be the case, but because what she said was so horrible and crazy. But really, Twitter has become global HR. You know, it used to be, it was the Christmas party that ruined you. You know, that's how you lost your job. Now you can destroy your own career by going on to this global HR, saying something completely repugnant, and the next day, you don't just lose your job, but everybody you work with, you lose your job. And you maybe you wake up in the morning, you don't even remember you did it. It is really interesting. And there's something also about comedians. They're in a new world. Comedians, every time that they talk, they're jumping off a cliff. That's kind of how they think, and they like that idea.
And they need to have no fear.
Yes. So whether it's Roseanne or I would say her left-wing opposite, which is Alec Baldwin. Remember, Alec Baldwin lost a talk show after the first or second night after he made a homophobic remark, I think on the street to a reporter. His show went like that. Of course, he got a second chance, and maybe he got a third chance. Will they afford second or third chances to Roseanne? I don't know. She has been known for saying a lot of crazy stuff. We knew that. I did a monologue praising her show, but I knew that she had always the potential for saying nutty stuff. You look at, remember Gilbert Gottfried. I don't know if you remember his tweets after the, I believe it was a Japanese earthquake.
Yes.
And it was just a string of jokes. And comedians have this thing where they see a cliff and they jump off it. And then in the old days, you could get away with it. Not anymore. Not with the fact that everything is permanent. Twitter is the bathroom wall for planet Earth. You can't unscrub it. She made a really stupid, foolish mistake, and now she's paying for it.
Can I ask you one last question before I let you go?
Yeah.
What do you think about the temptation, and there will be temptation, for people to conflate Roseanne Barr and try to say that she is representative of President Trump?
I think that, you know what, both sides often do that. You know, I've done that. When Alec Baldwin says something ridiculous, Becca used to make fun of me about this. I'd go, all you leftists are the same, and I'd bring up Alec Baldwin. We all, as humans in our tribes, have an instinct to do that, and just, I don't know. We just have to be able to move beyond this kind of thing.
I fibbed. I have one last question.
Sure.
Do you think that if people were to get off Twitter, right? She said, before she got fired, she said, okay, I apologize. It was a joke. I apologize. I'm not longer going to be on Twitter. Do you think that people believe that Twitter is what gives them some sort of power? Like it's some sort of fuel for their careers? Yeah,
I think I think Twitter creates potential for you to be an idiot. And I think we've been tricked into thinking it's really good to promote stuff and that you have to be out there and you have to have tons of followers. And what it really does is it just creates another opening for you to be a jerk.
Right. And then possibly
I count myself, by the way, I count myself among the jerk group.
But you remember the book I want to write?
What?
Tweets I Never Sent.
Oh, my God. I'm sure they're awful.
Yeah, mine would be really
I've heard you in private moments, Dana. You're despicable.
About the dog, indeed. All right, Greg Gutfeld, thank you. I'll see you in a couple of hours on 5. All right, for more on this, Fox News politics editor Chris Starwalt. Chris, what is there a political angle here?
Oh, yeah. Look, let's start with the basic understanding of the premise. Tribalism is getting worse, and it's making people so stupid. the amount of stupidity that is coursing through our body politic these days is pretty astonishing. But it was hard to miss with Roseanne. Here's a person who's made her career out of being awful, right? The famous national anthem with the spitting during the national anthem. She is a comedic version of a shock jock. Her whole employ here was about saying and doing outrageous things to get attention. When I saw conservatives and I saw Republicans gravitating to her because she was saying things that they liked about Donald Trump and they could claim her as one of their own, I thought, what a bad risk. This is a person who, this is like the animals in the wild. If certain stripe patterns let you know that this is a venomous snake, stay away. And the fact that the president couldn't stay away and the fact that a lot of his followers couldn't stay away tells you the intensity of tribalism.
Speaking of that, you know, the president has a big rally tonight in Nashville. He's going there to try to help support Marsha Blackburn in her quest to be the next senator from Tennessee. And Boston Globe Deputy Washington Bureau Chief, you know him as Matt Visor, he tweeted this: the question is not whether or not President Trump brings up Roseanne tonight during his rally in Nashville. The question is only whether it comes in the first 10 minutes or the 10 minutes after that. I'm not so sure.
I agree with you.
Look, we'll just see what happens. That's the president's favorite line, and I've been trying to adopt it. We'll see what happens. But my instinct is that either he will address it or he might just ignore her completely.
Yeah, I would think he would, or I would say it would be smart for him to ignore her completely. This is an L for his tribe, but the danger here, if you defend her, then you go right into, because remember, Roseanne occupies the murkiest part of the fever swamps of online conspiracy theorists about Pizzagate and the slain.
That's how this whole thing started.
Exactly.
Was a right-wing sort of alt-right whatever conspiracy theorist website, which I don't even know what those look like. I don't visit them. But it got her into a huge amount of trouble, Chris.
Right, and she trafficked in the same sort of kookism and grossness that people like the son of the former NSA, NSA under Kelly, you know who I mean, but his son and others.
Flynn Jr.
Right, Flynn Jr. and others trafficked in this terrible, terrible stuff that they put out there, and that's where she hung out. If the president moves to defend her against this action by ABC, then he is implicating himself in the rest of that rottenness.
Well, you know what? We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Chris Stirewalt, thank you.
You bet.
So a man going back to prison after a court rules he never should have been released. We're going to tell you about Matthew Charles and why many are asking the president to commute his sentence. You don't want to miss this story. Stay tuned.
Shepard Smith on the Fox News Dead. More ahead on the cancellation of Roseanne after her racist tweet from the show's namesake. We'll also take a look back at other controversies involving the comedian and ask, did ABC not know what it had in Roseanne? Of course it did. That's coming up on Shepard Smith Reporting, top of the hour. See you then.
A call for President Trump to commute the sentence of Matthew Charles, a Tennessee man sentenced to 35 years in prison for selling crack cocaine in 1996. But behind bars, he was a model inmate. He taught GED courses and became a law clerk. In 2016, a judge reduced his sentence, allowing him to be released after Congress lowered penalties for crack cocaine cases. After his release, he found a job, reconnected with his family, and became a volunteer at a food pantry. But a higher court recently found Charles was not eligible for a sentence reduction after all. And on May 14th, he turned himself in and is now in a medium security facility in South Carolina. Now a Change.org petition asking that President Trump commute Charles's sentence. With me now is the president of Families Against Mandatory Minimums, Kevin Ring. Thank you for being with me, Kevin. This story really struck me this week. I just laid out the case, and then I want to just read to you one quote that Matthew Charles said to a public radio station in Nashville in December. He said, I was like, when he said a prayer to God, he said, I was like, well, if you're real, you're going to have to kind of prove it because I hadn't experienced you in no part of my life. I just started weeping and crying, and it felt good. It just cracked the shell. And from there, Kevin, as I understand it, Matthew Charles really turned his life around, and now he's back in prison. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's right. And first of all, Dana, I have to thank you. There's thousands of families who are suffering because of problems in our criminal justice system. They don't get a voice. I'm glad you're bringing attention to this case because it's particularly heartbreaking. Matthew Charles does not need to be in prison for another day, let alone another decade. He presents no public safety threat to you or me or to anyone in his community. Yes, he went back to prison. He went to federal prison after serving a state stint. And before he went to federal prison, he was exposed to a Bible, and it changed his heart. And if people don't think that's enough, they should look at his deeds. While he was in prison, he taught GED classes. As you said, he became a law clerk. He did everything you want. He was in prison for 21 years and didn't have one write-up, one disciplinary infraction. He is a model, was a model prisoner. And when he got out, he was a model citizen for the year and a half that he was out, which is usually when, if people are going to reoffend, they do.
Well, let me ask you this then. Does his legal team, I don't know anything about his legal team. I'm assuming he's being represented by a public defender. But if this was actually a mistake on the court's side, does he have a significant chance for appeal?
The problem here is this is a case where a strict application of justice has, resulted in an injustice. So the Obama administration was the one who, after the judge said, because of the crack changes, you should get out 9 years earlier. That judge was in error. And the Justice Department under President Obama said, you've got to serve your full term. So they started the motion to put him back. But now he'd been out a year and a half, and the new judge looked at his rehabilitation and said to the new Justice Department attorneys, are you sure you want to do this? Isn't there a way that you can maybe drop charges and let him go? And again, according to the technical standard, their job was to try to send him back, and so they did. So this is one of those cases that cries out for clemency. Because,
well, let me ask you about that, because Tom Rogan wrote in the Washington Examiner for something that, as you mentioned, the Change.org petition to commute his sentence or to give him a pardon. Tom Rogan writes, President Trump can still make things right. His senior advisor, Jared Kushner, is leading efforts to get federal sentencing reforms through Congress, and Trump himself recently lauded America as a nation that believes in the power of redemption. Trump can render meaning to those words by commuting Charles's sentence and seeing this redeemed man freed to the new life he can build. Interesting to me, Kevin, is that President Trump's actually going to be in Nashville tonight for a rally. As I recall, one of the things that we always did for President Bush is provide him with local clips before he visited an area so he could get more of a sense of what was going on. And if President Trump sees anything about this case, I'm assuming and hoping that he probably has open ears.
I would hope so. And a Republican state senator came out today and also asked for the president to grant clemency. I was at the White House 2 weeks ago for the president's summit on prison reform, and I heard him say, we're not only a nation of second chances, that sometimes he believes in giving third chances. This is a case, like I said, that cries out for that. Sometimes when you give somebody a second chance, you worry about what's going to happen. You can't predict the future. Matthew Charles, because of this quirk, got to live out that second chance. We know what he can do in society.
Well, and also, Matthew Charles is actually a good role model to show other prisoners that are serving a sentence, like, if you get right, then you can also have a promising second chance.
That's right. And so many prisoners in this country in federal and state prison are just looking for hope. They want to know there's light at the end of the tunnel. 95% of prisoners in this country are going to come out someday. We want them to get rehabilitated, take courses, treat any addiction problems they have while they're there. He did it. He was the model. He's somebody we should be holding up and saying, congratulations, we want you to succeed.
All right. Kevin Ring, I appreciate being with us today.
Thank you.
So 15 minutes from now, Starbucks is closing thousands of its shops for anti-bias training after protest over an arrest at this Philadelphia location you can see on your screen. The whole incident was caught on camera, and we'll have more for you on it in just a moment. Thousands of Starbucks closing for business just moments from now, so you better hurry up if you need a coffee. The coffee chain will be shutting down for anti-bias education workshops. The company taking this action after the arrest of 2 African Americans in a Philadelphia location last month set off a series of protests. Brian Yennis is there in Philly where it all started. Brian.
Hi, Dana. Well, yeah, this is the Starbucks where it all happened in April, where the store manager told 2 black men that they could not be in that cafe because they did not purchase anything. Police were called. They were arrested. Well, this Starbucks closed early today, actually at 11:30 this morning, and it won't be reopened until 5 a.m. tomorrow. You'll see the sign there. We'll see you tomorrow. About 175,000 employees are now in this racial bias training program today. They'll be watching a video. They'll be having group discussions about racial bias, talk about their personal experiences. Listen to the Starbucks executive chairman who spoke about this program on CBS this morning.
it's interesting to me for us to be criticized for doing it for 4 hours. It's just the beginning. What we've said to our board, to our shareholders, is that we are deeply committed to making this part of everything we do. We hire 100,000 new people a year. This is going to be part of the onboarding training. We're going to globalize this.
And this all stems from that incident on April 12th where Dante Robinson and Rashawn Nelson were in this Starbucks here in Philadelphia. They were about to meet a business partner when, again, police were called by the manager because they were sitting in the cafe, like many people do, and they did not order something. This, by the way, Dana, Starbucks is going to lose, by one estimate, $12 million for closing their stores today for 4 hours. But again, this is something that, from what we've seen from people here, that they agree with. They're okay with this training from what we've heard here today, Dana.
All right, Brian Yennis, thank you.